I don't do well tethered, so I'm going to wander around. BeeCon 2025. How cool is this? For a country bumpkin to come out to the city. I'm going to say something that I hope sticks with you. 50 years from now, the second generation or third generation, your descendants are going to be sitting in the Javits Center over there with about 6,000 people for BeeCon 20 whatever, right? I think this is the start of something that's really cool. We're going to have a lot of fun today because this is a bit of a passion, but the first thing I want to tell you is if you go to the website, you can have this presentation. There's a lot of times when I do presentations that I see folks taking photos of the slides. Don't have to. You can go to the website, look under presentations, and you'll find this one for you. This is my home apiary in Ringoes, New Jersey, Stockton, New Jersey, where I live. As you heard in the opening, we have about 15 to 20 hives. I work for a printing company during the day. That's my real day job, but my passion is beekeeping. And one of the things that comes about with that is you learn all facets of beekeeping, and the equipment side of it is fun. And you'll note that I have polystyrene hives. I have in the back a Layens hive, which comes from Spain. In the front, I have a Warre hive, which comes from England. I love to dabble in equipment, and that leads to the illness that is all this stuff you see up here. So we're gonna have a little fun taking a journey. There's 70 slides in this presentation, and I've got 45 minutes. So I am gonna hustle, but I'll get through it all, I promise. So let's go. We call this thing the Gadget Garage. Over the years, we've looked at different things that people have invented. We've looked at different things that you can buy. We scour EAS and other places that we go to, Nabi and other shows. And some of it's ours that we made, some of it's inventive minds of other beekeepers, and some of it's stuff that we purchased. It's a little mix of everything. First one I want to talk about is this one. This is just a simple cooler, styrofoam cooler. And the premise of this is if you have errant wax somewhere, it is a massive asset and you shouldn't waste it. And you can melt it down right in your side yard or on your roof or wherever you want to be. This has a couple different Tupperware jars, right? You see the way the formation works, I'll show you. That's just a simple styrofoam cooler. And inside you put this tray. You put some water in the bottom of the tray, and then you take the second tray and you line it with paper towels. Now I took a little tool and I cut slits in the bottom, so when the wax melts through the paper towels, it goes down and lands in the water. And you could see a little bit of what the wax looks like when it's melted there. Take a pane of glass, put it over top of it, and you have a solar wax melter. This thing would cost you 10 bucks, 15 bucks at most to build. What can you do with the wax? Make cosmetics, you can make different things. I have some ideas to show you over alongside. You just nestle this in the tray, put it out in the sun, and literally within the day you have clean, fresh wax to use. This is hard to see, the glass cover that goes over top, but it's just a pane of glass, or you could use plexiglass or anything like that. We graduated to this one. I built this out of a box of scrap wood. I found a window alongside the road. I broke out the second pane, and you could see it has a tray. The window opens up and I could load the tray with whatever. The dirtiest wax still makes nice, clean, pretty wax down below. And it has that little gate in the bottom. It flows down from the top and lands in the tray. It's a typical like catering tray that's down below. And you can make clean wax from that. And I have some samples of the wax over here to show you. We had an old wheelchair sitting around. It's strapped to the wheelchair. And the funny thing is, when we want to make wax, we wheel this around our driveway into the sun area. You have to give your bees water. These are just a few examples of ideas that people came up with. We're not a fan of the Boardman feeder, which is this middle feeder here, for feeding because it creates robbing, but it's a great idea to put water right at the front porch of your bees. There's different situations where people have a bucket and they hang a rag over it and it wicks the water up and the bees land. They don't like to get their feet wet. So the idea here for most of these is they have something floating that the bees can land on and walk down and get a drink. Where we are, it's law in New Jersey that you have to supply water to bees. So we give ideas for beekeepers. You see they have corks here. They have old foam peanuts that they've used to recycle. This person created a solar pump. It uses a solar pump from a fish tank inside to trickle the water. Now, one thing I want you to note here is this up here. If you put a little salt in your water and a little bit of extract, this is anise extract, which is said to be really potent for the bees to smell. Bees like dirty water, surprisingly. They don't like clean, fresh water. You put in something that they could smell when they're flying over and they'll come down and use your water source. If you want to keep your bees out of neighbors' properties, make sure you establish your water early. By the way, note the holes in all these buckets. Why would you put holes in your buckets? Because when it rains, the water comes up to that area and it flows out of the holes and it doesn't overflow and your floaties don't end up on the ground. This is a simple feeding shim. How many people have beehives right now? Most of you. So if you want to feed your bees, you could build this box out of an inner cover, just build a frame around it, and or you could put 2-inch insulation in it. This one over here on this side with the pink insulation, that's the one thing. A lot of people wonder whether their bees would survive in the cold. If you put 2-inch insulation, that's the best insulation you could do. You really don't even have to insulate the sides of the box. That 2-inch insulation on top is imperative. It really does help the bees for overwintering. So there's a bunch of different gadgets you could build to set above your colony or inner cover. This is a different one. This is one, say you want to feed fondant, which is sugar in a patty form. You put a queen excluder around, a box around a queen excluder and set this right over your colony and you could put your fondant inside of that. Now this one down here, what they did was they created a sugar brick. They've got the brick in the middle over the queen excluder and they packed sugar, just wet it and packed it down, and then they took the brick off and it leaves the hole in the middle for the bees to crawl through and come and get your sugar. So given we're in October, a lot of beekeepers are trying to look for ways to feed the bees for winter. These are some ideas. This is a feeder for a top bar hive. Anyone have a top bar? No? Okay. They're an unusual shape and it's difficult to create feeders for them, and that's what this is. It slides in and it has a wire mesh that goes through so the bees could walk down to the liquid. This over here is a commercial drone brood frame. The premise of a drone brood frame is you put it in early in the season, the bees build the drone, and the varroa mites prefer drones. And the varroa mites go in the drone brood, and when you pull the drone brood frame out, you're eliminating the varroa mites attacking your colony. If you don't want to buy dedicated drone brood frames from commercial, you could use a regular frame. You just put a bar through the middle of it, and the bees will build drone comb in that. So you don't have to buy a specialized piece of equipment. Now, a lot of times in the top, you see that one has a little bit of drone brood, but a lot of times they put honey across the top in that. So this is a homemade drone brood frame. This is a 4-chamber queen rearing box. When you rear queens and you want to make a queen and you put it in a box, it's kind of silly to put one queen in a 10-frame box. So what people devised is this situation where before you build the box, you cut the slots and you divide it into 4 chambers. And it has 4 holes, one in the front for chamber 1, one on the side for chamber 2, one in the back for chamber 3, and one on the other side for chamber 4. And you just cut it, there's plans for this, and the slot goes all the way down so that every time you put the divider in, it goes all the way to the bottom board, so bees can't cross from one chamber to the other. So you run 4 miniature little hives. And each queen gets to get its start in life and build out the couple frames. Now, this is a 4-frame, 4-chamber. You could make it 3 chambers too. And then when you have all those chambers, once the queen gets established and starts laying, you can move it out into a 5-frame nuke.
This is on a screen bottom board?
It's on a screen bottom board, or you could use a solid, but that one is a screened, yes. This is a swarm trap. Out by us, in the country, we can collect swarms all season long and get 8 to 10 swarms. We put a dedicated box with old comb and put it out. Now, the funny thing is, if you read Tom Seeley, who's a noted scientist from Cornell, he'll tell you you have to put the box so high and it has to be this big in the entrance. We take these swarm traps and just set them around our property and we catch bees with them. So don't get too fussy about hanging them. This website, Let 'Em Be, is a guy who is absolutely fixated on building swarm traps. And I know beekeepers in the city who set this stuff out and they catch swarms here too. Free bees, that's what swarms are all about. This is what the entrance looks like. It's screened off and it has a pin through the middle. And the reason would be so that birds and stuff don't move into your swarm trap because they're not occupied. And then that box over there has a bracket on the back where you could strap it to a tree if you were so inclined. How do you strap it to a tree? You use one of these. Some of our beekeepers have made this thing called a jib, which has a pulley on it, and you lean it against the tree, and you use a pulley system to bring it up, lay it against the tree, and then secure it with the strap. This is if you're following Tom Seeley and you want the box. Now, when you want the box to be occupied up high, which is where bees would prefer to build a nest and swarms would move in. When you're done, bees move in and you want to bring the box down, you set the jib back up, hook it up, disconnect it, and just use the pulley to lower it down to the ground and transfer the frames out. This came from Bee Culture magazine. I have one of these. It works pretty cool. In fact, I don't know if that's mine or my neighbor's, but how many have this? Anybody? These are the best thing in the whole yard. When you take a box off, don't set it down on the ground, because guess what? You have to bend over to pick it up. They're so lightweight, they're inexpensive, and they will save your back in beekeeping. Take your box off and put it right down over top of this, and it's so easy to move hives in and out, and they fold up. I know if you have them on a roof, you'd want to secure them so they don't blow away, but so nice to have these things. I have one behind each row of my apiary, and I use them nonstop. This is an alternative that was made by someone, and the plans were out there. You can go to that URL and get it. It's made out of 2x4s. If you're handy with a wood shop, you can go to Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever you go and buy that plan. The plans are out there, and make your own. It's designed for a width that you can take your frames out and hang them down in. And if you're moving multiple hives and doing that stuff, it's kind of like having a ladder bench system in your apiary. This is an interesting thing. Some beekeepers like to use wax foundation, and they don't want to use wire or pins, and they wire it with this tube. You pour melted wax in and run it along, and it seals the bottom and helps to hold the wax in. Does anybody use wax? I do. Nice. When you do swarms, or you forget to put a frame in your box and you end up with an errant batch of comb, what do you do with the thing? We sometimes cut up bee trees and we get the comb like this out of it. Or if you forget to put a frame back in, the bees will build from the roof down through the gap. We've all had it happen, errant comb. You take a frame, you put pins in it, and you wire it with wires on one side, and then you take the comb and lay it in there. It doesn't have to be attached. It will rest in there quite fine. And then on the other side, you have pins, and you run the wires, this is fishing wire, in, and it holds the comb. The bees will attach it eventually to the woodenware, and you just take a pair of scissors and snip it and pull it right out. So if you ever had loose comb that you would like to save and rescue and use, this is a great way to secure it into a frame. I like individual hive stands. Some beekeepers will put cement blocks and 2 4x4 rails and have hives lined up on the rails. I don't like the fact that I can't stand next to a hive. It's hard on your back to reach over and pull that. So individual hive stands. I was never great at woodworking, so I designed this PVC hive stand. Then people said, well, it's not going to be strong enough and it's not going to hold up in the sun and things like that. So one of my listeners from my podcast went out and jacked his car up and put it on top of the hive stand to demonstrate to people that it's strong enough that can hold it. And in the opening shot, you saw that I have these, all my hives are on these hive stands. They're really simple to make if you're not a good craft person. It's easy peasy to build stuff out of PVC. This is an alternative hive stand. It's just made out of simple 4x4s and 2x4s. So if you have rudimentary skills, you can build this one, you could build this one. The plans are out there for this stuff, and I highly recommend, and we teach this all the time, individual hive stands are better. When you can stand next to a hive and pick the box up and hold it close to your body on the short side, meaning the short side is away from you, you're centralizing all the weight against your body, and it's not a torsion on your back. When you're standing this way and reaching for a hive and trying to pick it up and turn it, that rotation is one of the worst things that cause the most back injuries. So I really am an emphasis on individual hive stands. This is a device. There's Sharon and I, my wife Sharon up here. We capture swarms all the time with this thing. I have one right here. That's that one. I have a short little pole. Sometimes you get them in a tree and they're right overhead. You could use a short pole. That pole and some of the other ones that you'll see, I think it's in the next shot, will extend up to 30 feet. We've used it all the time for taking a swarm out of a tree. You put it up underneath, pop it up, the bees fall down into the bucket, and then you just lower it down and dump it into a hive. If you look, this is how we built this. You know that's a water bottle, right? And over here is a handle for a roller. You cut the roller off and it has the extension hole for you to screw the pole into. So it's epoxied. That's what that process is across the top, applying the epoxy. And if you want to look, you could see what this looks like. That's the bucket there. There's one of the long handles. We've gotten bees out of some of the highest, like 25 feet up. You can get them out of a tree if you ever get yourself in that situation. That's my friend Bob Kloss. He couldn't make it today. He's another EAS master beekeeper. He and I invented the Gadget garage. As you can tell, we do this talk all over the nation.
This is an open community feeder. You normally feed the hives with these at about 300 feet away from the hive. It's a 5-gallon or larger. It can even be small, a food-grade bucket. It has the rim around it with individual indentations. Never put a hole through the ones where the handle comes through. You skip that one. But on the inside of the bucket, you drill holes that are large enough that they're not going to easily clog, but not too large to where when it gets empty, bees can get stuck or get into it. If you're too big, you're going to end up with it filled with bee parts and yellow jackets. You can use any lid completely sealed. I chose the Home Depot resealing lid, which actually is threaded, and you fill this up with water, sugar solution, whether it's your 1:1 or 2:1, and you make sure with wet lubricated gasket you seal it completely tight. When you actually place it, you want to make sure it's a level location and you actually invert it. You're going to lose a few cups of water, and what will happen is the water will create a vacuum in the upper portion, and it will stabilize and fill these cups, and the bees will actually feed off of this area.
So that was John Wilson. He filled that bucket with colored water and turned it over and showed us this is what it looks like. The bees come to the area where the colored water is. John was one of our trainers in our club. We lost him to cancer about 1.5 years ago, and I dedicate this talk to him. He was a great teacher and always on the lookout, managed dozens and dozens of hives, and he's greatly missed.
Any drowning in that lake? Any drowning?
They don't drown because they can land on those edges and walk in.
Oh, okay.
Every one of those edges creates a place for their feet. Now look, when you're doing community feeding, you should do it at the right time of year. Be careful when there's a dearth, which means an absence of food in the environment. You don't want to create a situation where the bees are really coming crazy there. Most of the springtime and into summer, you could do that. This time of year, maybe you want to be careful. You're going to get yellow jackets and other things. But a lot of people do practice open community feeding. Use common sense where you are to say whether you can or can't do this. If you build your own frames, don't build them one at a time, holding the frames in your lap. Use a hive jig. These are out there, the plans. It makes it so easy. You put all of the end bars in, you load the top bars across, you nail them, you flip it over. Easy peasy building frames. Never build them one at a time with a hammer and nails. It'll take you forever. This is my friend David Waldman. He's a past president. He's demonstrating this device that's like a quiet cloth. It has a metal ring with canvas. He has it sitting over the hive, but obviously if it were sitting over frames, it would expose 2 frames and cover the rest. And you would pull the frames out of the center of the hole and keep the hive very quiet while you work on just the ones that are exposed. This I have with me right here. You can see what it looks like. It's built for building boxes. One of the key things for building a beehive box is to ensure that you have it square and true. Using the frames and the corner brackets makes it so easy that you set the box up after you glue it, slide it in, clamp it, and then you could use corner clamps on the top and you just drive your nails or screws or whatever you have. I have this set up so that it could work both full-size boxes, and in the small picture you see it could build nuke boxes with it. This is such a nice device because it frees up your hands and it makes sure that all your boxes are square and true. I don't love these Irwin clamps. They break really easy, so don't use those. Use a different brand. How about this thing? What would you use this for? If you were pulling frames out of a honey super and you wanted to get the bees clear, you just zap them and then transfer it over to an empty box. It would be bee-free. That's kind of cool. Now this is from Asia. They're now selling these in the United States. I just saw one in a bee catalog. My boss bought one, and he bought one from somewhere that didn't have enough power. He said when it shakes, it doesn't shake the bees off. So make sure you get one with high horsepower. This is hive tool holster. How many times do you lose your hive tool? Have you ever dropped one in the grass or on the thing and run it over with a lawnmower? Hive tool holster. This is a homemade one that someone built. You can see that I've repurposed. That's a knife holster. That's a garden holster. These over here are the Holy Grail. They were made by Brushy Mountain. They're really nice, small, compact one. And nowadays, magnet ones are all the option. You see them. And by the way, this is another secret weapon. This hive tool, I love this hive tool. It's different than any other kind. It's called an easy pry. When you go in, you set it on top and you turn it and you give it a twist and it pulls the frame out. Try different hive tools. There's a lot of different out there and you might find something that is of interest to you. I have this with me. Who's ever done beelining? Anybody? What's the premise of this? There's one. You could capture bees coming to a remote location and mark them and then track them back to the hive in nature. We did a meeting at our beekeepers field where we tracked bees back to a thing. There's a book by Megan Denver with Tom Seeley that shows how to do these, and it's fascinating. I've met Tom Seeley and I've seen him do this in person. It's like a magic moment to spend time with Tom and have him show you how to do beelining. And it's really worth reading the book to understand the concept of how our ancient beekeepers used to track beehives for when they were trying to become beekeepers before they had them in skeps. This is a crush and strain bucket system. To understand how this works, you put a filter in the bottom bucket and a ring. Then you take the second bucket, which has the really big holes, seems weird, doesn't it? Set it over top and you put all the material in. You would think the really big holes would make all the wax that you crush. So if you don't have an extractor, you could take the honeycomb with honey in it, crush it all up into a gobbledygook and put it in the bucket, and all the honey will strain through the holes, down through that filter, and fill the bottom box, which has a gate on it, and then you just open the gate and let the honey flow out. So you don't have to have an extractor. So why don't people use more crush and strain? Because it requires the bees to rebuild the comb, and we like to reuse honeycomb. But if you want to be a natural beekeeper and you want to build fresh new comb to put your wax in every year, you could use this 2-bucket crush and strain system. Simple, make sure you buy food grade buckets, and you could buy them from Home Depot, Lowe's, and other places. Everybody knows what this is, right? Varroa mite tray. I don't like this. It annoys me to have to put the bees in there and try and scoop them out. So I invented this thing. This is a box that you put the frame in and you give it a shake. And the bees go down in the bottom, and then you tilt it and it goes in the little cup. And the cup has a half cup measure on it, and you take that out, you let the bees fly away, and the half cup is your perfect measurement for dumping in to do your varroa mite sample. This is a double screen board. Sometimes you have a colony that's just not doing great. You have it consolidated down to one box, and you don't know what to do with it. You could take this colony and put it over top of another colony with a double screen board. The heat from the bottom colony will come up through the second one and keep them warm and help them make it through the winter, and then you put the roof over top. If you combine 2 hives, with the gap between them, they function perfectly fine, even if they have 2 different queens, and it has a notch out the back. So you put this in the middle, but you notice the notches out the back. So the bottom bees fly out the front and the top bees fly out the back. That's over there on the table. This is a homemade uncapping tank. Uncapping tanks are so useful, so much easier than using a bucket or anything else when you're cutting the tops off of your cappings. Having a large space for them to fall into and having a center bar to rest your frame on while you're trying to work makes things a little bit easier for you. Food grade, they just laid a mesh screen in there to capture the wax and the honey drips through, and you could cut a hole in it and buy a gate to make the honey flow out. It's pretty simple to build. This is a double screen board. It's a weird thing. If you know how to do oxalic acid treatments, you put a device in and you spray like a fog into the colony that treats them with oxalic acid vapor. The premise of this is you have 2 boards, a solid bottom board and a screen bottom board. They're regular everyday ones. You take the screen one and you turn it around and you screw it over top of the solid one. The bees can't get through the screen, but it creates an open space for you to insert the oxalic acid fog into the back of the hive. And you could fog from the bottom. If you've ever used a wand, oxalic acid, and you put it in your colony, sometimes it catches the wax on fire that's laying on your bottom board. I've had that happen. You know, so this is an idea to create an open space to fog in. I run these on my hives, and then in the wintertime, I just put a piece of foam, 2-inch plastic or poly foam in there to close them off. The other thing that you could do with this is a basic everyday school cafeteria tray fits inside, and/or measuring trays so you can track your mite drops through the screen board. This is a robber screen. There's one over on the table if you want to look at it closer. During the day, the bottom is open. If your hive is really under attack, you could close the two bottom and open the top one up over here. That one normally stays closed. There's a screen in the front, I know that's a terrible picture, that prevents the bees from seeing how the internal bees are getting out. And so when you see that on the front of the hive, if you have some, my friend runs these all the time. He has them on his hives 24/7. And then when robbing season comes, he can close them off and stop it right away. This is the old school testing device, this guy. This was manufactured by Propolis, etc., out of Canada, and they cost a lot of money. They're a double peanut butter jar. You put your mite-laden bees up here and you shake them, and the liquid goes down and the mites go down and you count from the bottom chamber. Randy Oliver devised a way to build one of these using 2 Skippy peanut butter jars. That's what this is. Or you could go to Propolis, etc. I think they still sell them. Now, most of the days, people buy the yellow-capped Varroa mite tool, but this is still out there. A lot of people use them. One of the things that I got from this concept is we have a chia seed. You know chia seeds? It is chia, right? It has a screen top on it. I thought, I need to harvest a little crush and strain. I had a hunk of wax that I got off of one of the colonies that had built. I crushed it up and I set 2 jars over top of the screen for the chia screen thing, and it drained down through the bottom with just a couple pieces of tape. So using the same concept, you can make a mini crush and strain. If you ever pull off like a small errant piece of comb with honey in it and you want to get a jar of honey, there you go. That's how you do it. This guy I have right here, I like to clean my foundation out all the time. Every 5 years I go through everything I have, and I use this tool. This is made for the automotive industry. It has hooks on it that are perfect for dragging through the grooves to clean your frames up. You could buy this picker thing from a catalog. It's uncomfortable and it doesn't work very good. This thing is amazing. I told this to people and I keep writing me notes going, I bought that tool and I really like it. And what's cool is the double hooks that go off the left and the right are good for left-handed or right-handed. So it's a really useful tool, and it's made for pulling window trim in cars. This screen thing you could probably buy at a Kohl's, and when you have a capping tank and you keep setting your stuff down and you're getting honey all over your table and your tablecloth and laying it on the floor and it falls off, it's kind of like the kitchen sink idea where they put the screens over. I thought this was pretty smart, actually. This came from my friend Justin. He was seeing robbing in his top entrance, so he wanted to mask it. That's a piece of gutter. He went out to his garage, he cut a piece of gutter, and he just slipped it in over top of the top entrance, and it thwarted the bees from robbing the hive. Has anybody used chloroplast signs? You have to go after the election on November 11th and pick up some of these. When I take a hive off of a stack and I put it down, I put it on a chloroplast sign. And then I take another one, just like that, and I set it over top and it becomes a quiet box. When I transport equipment from my outyard to my home and put it in my car, I lay these in the bottom so it doesn't muck up my carpet. There are a billion uses for chloroplast in beekeeping, even for storage in your shed, your garage, wherever you keep your stuff. I don't like setting equipment down in the grass or on a roof, in the stones, you know what I mean, where it picks up all that stuff on the bottom of the propolis. You put them on those. This thing's called an emery shim. This is for making more honey. You have your brood chamber boxes, 2 of them in the bottom, and you put your honey super over. If you think about during the season, the bees have to come in the front entrance, up through the brood nest and into the honey super. This just gives them a shortcut. You want to use this only during the brood season or during the honey flow. Otherwise, they'll build comb in it. George Emery, kind of a crass old codger guy, came up with this, and he has instructions how to use it. Bees can come right through and go into the honey chamber, and it's proven they make more honey using one of these. What is this thing? Anybody know what an endoscope is? I have one right here. This is for looking in your beehive. Ever wonder if your hive is alive in winter? You take this thing, you hook it to your phone, and you stick it in the front entrance. And you could go in and actually see the bees. That's Bob and I. I was trying to tell if my top bar was alive and or, right? We have those and FLIR cameras. This is a bit of what it looks like. How kind of cool is that in the middle of January, stand out there and shove this up into your hive and look at your bees? It's not the greatest picture, it's 720, not even 1080, but they're 15 bucks on Amazon. How about this thing? This is a FLIR, I have one of these up here. You attach them, they go right in the bottom of your phone, and you can take heat pictures. Why would you want this? 2 hives on there, which one's alive? Which one? You could see it over here, can't you? This one's alive, that one's not. That's the shot for that top bar that day. You could tell the colony's still alive. Is it big? Nope, it's tiny. Does it need to be fed? Maybe. So you would look in on it. Having the information from a FLIR camera is kind of fun. And then you go out to your house and you start shooting pictures of your windows and stuff and go, I better keep this for beekeeping. How about this thing? It looks like a kid's toy, and that's what it is. It's a microscope. See here, they're showing you what the cross-section looks like of the orange. Where could you use this in beekeeping? Bees, of course. You know what that thing is? This is the end of it. This guy is right here. This is what it looks like. And I'll have these over on the side so you can take a peek. That's a stinger. On the TV, we put it on. We wanted to show the kids what it looked like. This is the gland of the stinger. It's a terrible picture because it was taken from the TV. It was sharp and clear, sorry. But this is what the actual lancet looks like going through. That's what stings you. And when we moved it around, we could get a clearer picture. Unfortunately, this is a picture of a TV at low resolution, but the end of it has a little barb, which is what catches in your skin. It's kind of cool to play around with this. But imagine you could look at bee wings and bee legs and bee parts and other things inside. How about one of these? We use this, I have one right here, for queen rearing. And it has different magnification goggles, like you could put them on. You look kind of goofy wearing it, but when we do queen rearing and we're trying to pull the larva out and place it into a queen cup, we use this thing and it's great. If you just take a frame somewhere out of your inventory and look, you'd be amazed at the things you could see when you start looking at this level. This is a vacuum for swarming bees. You have to have electricity. A lot of times we carry a portable battery with us, and we go out in the field and suck up the bees. And if you look, they have holes in the buckets here. The premise of the hole is to change the suction for the device. When you line the holes up, it allows the most air through. When you rotate one bucket, which sits inside the other bucket, they go one inside the other, it closes the gap down and it creates more suction. Now, does this kill bees? No. This 5-gallon bucket vacuum, buy it at Lowe's or Home Depot along with the buckets, very cheap, and you could suck them up. We do cutouts, we do bee trees, we do swarm capture, and we take this with us. It comes with a ribbed hose. At some point we learned that the rib hose is a little hard on the bees, so we replaced it with a smooth hose. These you could buy off Amazon. They're pretty cheap, no big deal, but you could use the rib ones, a lot of people do. And the only change that we make with this guy is that we fill it with foam on the 90 on the entry. So when the bees go in, they don't thwack that plastic. It just has this little insert. And you can see up there that that hole nests down to that hole, and when you rotate the bucket, it changes the vacuum. Now, one of the cool things about this is we made a separate one, and I have a lid for this. When you suck the bees up, sometimes the swarms are so big that they occupy this. You dump one into this, close it off, and then you fill the rest with the other one and close that off, and you could take both buckets home and dump it into your hive. So I was talking about this before we started, and I got the question, does it make the bees angry? Actually, no. For whatever reason, they seem to do really well in this. And we've used this dozens of times, no problem. I want to say that there's more, but wait, there's more. When we did EAS this year, we did Gadget Garage. We filled a room this big, no joke, with gadgets, myself and another beekeeper from Maryland. I brought a handful of things that are not in the presentation over on the side, and during the break, feel free to come and ask me. I have things about processing wax. I have things about queen rearing and management practices and so on. And you know, I have to say that it's a weird hobby to look through different beekeeping blogs and Facebooks and other things to find this stuff. But I'm always on the lookout for a good invention. So if you know of anything that you didn't see here today, let me know. I would love to go look it up. And that being said, this presentation's up on the website. And I wanted to give a quick plug. My club, Northwest New Jersey Beekeepers Association, is Hunterdon and Warren County. We're on the west side of New Jersey. If you scoot out Interstate 78 to the end where it crosses over into Pennsylvania, we're having a meeting in November. It's an all-day symposium, and we have featured speakers, Aaron Evans and others coming in. Dr. Robin Underwood from Penn State and so on. So if you like, you know, in November, what are you going to do for beekeeping and you want to try something? NWNJBA, come on out and see us. Lunch is included, breakfast is included, and we have an amazing staff running this meeting, and we have keynote features. I'll be doing a presentation on alternative hives, all the different hives that you saw and then some. So any questions about anything I've talked about? And I think I'm spot on for time. Does anybody have any of this stuff? Yeah, a couple of you, yeah.
I'm curious about the trap, the swarm traps.
Yeah.
How often do you go out and check it?
The question is, how often do you go out and check a swarm trap? Not often enough. There's occasions when you get out there and you find out that they've really set themselves up in it. You know, ideally during swarm season, you'd go out once a week, once every 2 weeks and check it. But if you left it for a month and didn't get back to it, you'd find a full colony of bees. And you know, what happens is those swarm traps are a little bigger than an actual hive, and they build the excess comb off of the frames. When you put a swarm trap out, you're supposed to put old comb in there. It's an attractant to bring the scouts in. And the space of it is a little bigger than a conventional box, so there's empty, and if you leave them too long, they'll build it all. I'm gonna tell you a funny story. That trap that you saw, I built several of them. I put one next to my garage and never deployed it. This year is the 9th year in a row bees have moved into that trap sitting alongside my garage. I never put it out. They see the size of it. I always put old comb in it now that I know that it's a resource, and I've caught a swarm in it. I set traps out around my property every year, and I fill every one of them. I sometimes go out in the neighborhood and do swarm traps, swarm captures. I do bee trees and things like that, but I'm never out of want for bees in my own location. And when I talk to people, if they do the same thing, they always come back to me and say eventually, yeah, you're right. You just have to set a swarm out, put old comb in it. Swarm Commander is the stuff. You have to spray Swarm Commander on it. It's a spray that has queen scent on it, and it will attract the bees. And I'm telling you, that's the stuff that brings them in. Once a scout finds it, you'll see them walking around and they'll have a great old time, and you'll have bees in your box with, you could tell, they walk inside, they walk up, they walk down, they measure, they walk around the entrance, they walk around. When you see 10 or so bees milling around, looking at different things, flying, doing whatever, you got a swarm looking at it. Yeah, I had another question?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. The mic box that you made, are you selling those?
Am I selling? She wants to know if I'm selling this mite box. No, but you could feel free to come up here and measure it and take whatever. It's really stupid simple to build. I only made 2 of them, one for me and one for Bob. And
what is your favorite method for doing mite checks? I've tried a couple of them.
what is my favorite method for doing mite checks? I know that people, I have a device over there that uses gas, to gas the bees, to put them to sleep, to do a mite check. It doesn't work. It works, but it doesn't work, okay? I know people do sugar shakes. You can get a somewhat effective mite check out of a sugar shake, but sugar shakes are so temperamental when it's humid and all that. You could do a sugar shake, get your count, and then wash the bees in alcohol and find out you missed a lot. So honestly, the only real way to do it is an alcohol wash. And people don't like that because it kills the bees. So if you really don't want to kill the bees, you can do a sugar shake, but you should round up a little bit with the sugar shake. And in the end, that number of bees, that's the rationale. You're going to kill X number of bees, but if you get a proper count and you find out your varroa mites are high and they're going to destroy your colony, this is what I tell people for varroa mite treatment. Do a treatment early in the spring. Get the bees knocked out. Mites knocked out in the spring. They will grow exponentially through the season, and when you get to harvest season come July, they won't be a critical mass. And then what you need to do in July and August, not September or October, do your mite monitoring and treat. And the premise of that is you don't want them to get critical. And additionally, in August, after the summer solstice, about August, beginning of August, August 8th, they start building winter bees. So you want to have your varroa mites cleaned up by the beginning of August and then keep them at bay all the way through that summer stretch, because that's when they're making summer into winter bees. And the winter bees are the ones that have to live months without parasitic symptoms. Alcohol wash is the answer. Do it in August. Any? She asked, did I ever try the flow hive? Yes, I have one. I think it's a nice piece of kit. I really do. If you ever seen one, they're beautiful. I tell this story about my flow hive. The beekeeper had it, and he struggled with the flow hive for 3 seasons, and I went to help him as a mentor, and he said, take this thing, I don't want it. And I tried it for 2 seasons, and I couldn't get it to work. I was at EAS one year, and I sat across from this guy, and I said, you look familiar to me. I don't know where I can place you. He said, I'm Stuart Anderson. You know who that is? Inventor of the flow hive. He was eating breakfast with us. And I said, after everybody fawned over him and told him how great, they all left for their sessions, and I said, Stuart, can you help me with something? I have a flow hive, and I can't get the bees to build it. He said, this is the funniest thing. We could build 100 of them, put them out in the field. 99 of them will work great, and that one right there, for some reason, the bees won't touch. We don't know why. We haven't ever figured out this riddle, but this is what you do with it. Put it under the colony on the bottom board and put an active colony in it and have them walk through it. And then during the middle of the season, switch it on top and the bees will use it. I did it the next season and it worked. And I had to have that magical moment where you turn the spigot and the honey flows out. And the answer is yes, they're really nice, they work. I know beekeepers who have them, they do a great job. And they're extremely expensive. They're quite fussy. If you know about the flow frames, they're fussy, but they're a nice piece of kit. That's what I say. I don't disparage them in any way. I think people who, you know, there was this knock about they didn't tell people who bought them that you actually have to maintain the bees. They corrected that. They've come up with a lot of fixes for the various little idiosyncrasies, and they're a good colony. Good quit. Any other questions? Yeah.
The drone frame that you're building, you just are putting a bar through the middle and then that forces comb below up. Can you just explain a little bit?
Yeah, she said the homemade drone brood frame. It's just a regular frame with a bar. And for whatever reason, that bar seems to entice them, and we've tried it over and over again. They love to build drone underneath. Now, obviously, don't put any foundation in that. You might want to put a starter, but that open space in the right time, you want to use it in the spring when you're going to deploy a drone brood frame. They will see that open space as the place to put drones. And whether you use a true drone brood frame or that one, at the right time, April, May, early June, it concentrates all the drones in your colony in one place. And if you're neat and tidy and don't like to have drone brood comb in the bottom of your frames and whatever, some people don't like that, that's the way to control it. You basically force them to build it in one place. And one of the nice things about that is when you want to get rid of it, you just take a knife and go cut around the circumference of it and pop it out. And a lot of people take them and give them to chickens or whatever. Yeah. So I'll be over on the side. I want you to come if you have a minute. I'll walk you through whatever is left over there. There's a bunch of different things you haven't seen. And this equipment will be up there. A lot of what's shown up there is up here, and I'll bring it over to the side table. And I want to say thank you so much for having me. I had a good time. Here's to hoping 50 years from now, BeeCon will be over in the Javits Center. And thanks, Nick.